All right. Hello, everyone. It is our X update. I don't know. It was sixth, seventh update. Point is, we've been pretty good so far. So, yeah. Hi, Diane. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm trying to make it through another day without losing my mind. And our totally idiotic politicians make that very difficult. But, yeah.
Although I think there was a very big shift, which we'll get to. I actually wanted to take up the raids and censorship first, because that creates the context for Robert Kennedy Jr.'s decision to withdraw from the election in the swing states so as not to throw the election to Kamala Harris, because as he said, he promised his supporters he would not be a spoiler. And I think people who don't understand that or why he did that or are enraged, frustrated, and I understand that, because if you're working really hard on a campaign and you've put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and money and everything else, that's tough, but you're missing how phenomenally corrupt and rotten the Democratic Party is, and the how near we are to thermonuclear war right now.
Absolutely. I think in the context of Kennedy resigning, what had happened? He met with Scott Ritter, I think a day or two before Scott Ritter was actually raided. He had burgers with Scott, or as Scott put it, burgers with Bobby. And then less than 48 hours later, Scott gets raided by the FBI, sits down with the FBI for 5 hours. And then we see the fact that this guy, Richard Medhurst, are you familiar with this, Diane?
Yeah.
Yeah. He gets, what is it? He got pulled off a plane, right? Is that what it was, at an airport?
He came back to Heathrow Airport, and I didn't realize Vanessa Beeley, who is a good friend of mine, has been through the same kind of treatment. She's a British journalist in Syria. But Medhurst has been very outspoken against the wars. He's a Syrian Christian. I guess maybe I think he might be a citizen of the UK or whatever they are, subject. Can't have citizens. They don't have a constitution, but a subject. And he gets taken off the plane, searched, put in a tiny freezing cell that smells of urine for 24 hours, has all of his, electronic devices and microphones and everything. I don't know if they gave them back. He didn't say whether they did or not. But the thing that distinguished his being seized from Vanessa Beeley and the others is that he's actually being charged as some kind of accomplice to terrorism.
Wow.
Which is like the Ukrainian list, these kill lists, which I and Helga and Scott Ritter and other people are on, Trump and Kennedy are on, where the Center for Countering Disinformation said, if you are spreading Russian propaganda, and Russian propaganda is anyone who says that Ukraine cannot win the war, which is obvious. That's like saying, water flows downhill, right? Ukraine cannot win the war. You are what they call an information terrorist. And they're calling for actual prosecution. And as we heard from the LaRouche organization Saturday show, the UK is now really passing laws explicitly to silence free speech.
Yeah. It's all happening in this because we keep saying that our government here in the United States, our government is run by NATO. And I believe that to be more and more true every day. Of course, we keep saying that there is no real president, there is no real leadership or authority, and that NATO's position right now is to get Kamala Harris in the office. And we see that with the fact that they have in France, which is not necessarily a NATO country. I don't think they are officially a NATO country, but they're certainly part of the Five Eyes, and they work with NATO very. They're a NATO country.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that's not true. I don't think so. I don't think they are.
Yes, they are.
Because
yes, they are.
No, because the Gaul did not want them to be a part of NATO.
I know, but they are.
Hold on, Diane. Is France officially a part of NATO? Oh my God, it is. Wait, no, it's one of the founding Wait, France has been a member of NATO in the past, but has withdrawn from its integrated military command structure. This means that the French units are not under NATO command. However, France still plays an active role in the alliance. Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
but the reason they had to do that is because they were threatening to send ground troops to Ukraine, and everyone didn't want Article 5 to be invoked if Macron was such a moron that he decided to send ground troops and they got killed.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So, yeah.
But
No,
the point
go
I'm
ahead.
bringing up, well, I was bringing up France because of the fact that they pulled off, they got word at last minute that the CEO and founder of this app called Telegram had just landed. So they quickly got a warrant for his arrest signed, and then they detained him. And now they're accusing him of up to 20 years in prison for complicity in drug trafficking and
Right. Can
human
I
trafficking. Yeah, go ahead.
just show you this? This is just the New York Post article. Oops. So they have this ad. They have all these ads, but there he is. And this guy, by the way, is not a pro-Putin person. Pavel Durov. He's Russian, French, I guess. He was sort of a dissident, but that it doesn't matter. And I think what I read on RT just shortly before we got on is apparently, and what they're charging with is they're saying he wasn't regulating Telegram enough, so therefore everything that was done through Telegram, whether it's child pornography, drug trafficking, human trafficking, whatever, he's responsible for this. Now, he had just hired a guy in Belgium to make sure he was compliant with the EU standards on all these things. But it turns out that his actual offense may be that he was refusing to cooperate with US intelligence agencies who wanted to get the data of users of this app, which is one of the few places where you can still get accurate intelligence on what's happening in Russia, on the ground in Russia, on the ground in Ukraine. And by the way, Telegram is also used quite freely by the NAFO, pro-fascist Ukrainians as well. So he's not being biased. He's allowing free speech for everyone. And apparently he objected to the American intelligence agencies trying to get a hold of everyone's data.
Yeah, of course. And the fact that it's not all separate, right? Just because they happen in different countries. It's all one thing, whether it's Richard Medhurst, whether it's this guy, whether it's Scott Ritter, or even, I think, even the New York Times they wrote an article. I think you saw this article where they had to admit that, yes, the FBI is conducting raids and surveilling people. And they also put in a little nugget there that says more searches are to come. No conclusions can be made yet, but more people will be investigated. And, they even said that some senior Trump advisor from the 2016 campaign also was raided as well. This is all just part of NATO's.
Well, Dimitri Simes, and that's another big case. He had been in dialogue with Trump, I think, way back in 2016, a long time ago. He's lived in Moscow the last 2 years. He's a U.S. citizen, and he worked with Richard Nixon. After Nixon left the White House, they set up some kind of Russia-U.S. I forget the name of it, but some kind of international dialogue association. So the thing that you see is that anyone who wants to have dialogue, particularly between the US and Russia, or who thinks that talking is preferable to using nuclear weapons, is somehow now a threat to whatever, the NATO-verse. Can we call it the NATO-verse?
Universe, yeah. They seem to be allergic to peace. They seem to be allergic to dialogue and cooperation. I mean, what we saw last night, Israel preemptively striked in self-defense. You try to figure out how that works. A preemptive self-defense strike against Hezbollah in Lebanon, where supposedly reports were that Lebanon was going to send 6,000 missiles to Israel. So they took preemptive strikes. And I put something up on Twitter that got a very good reaction, which it just was, these idiots are going to blow us all up. And I think it has like 8,000 likes now, and it got really good reactions. And somebody said, well, if you knew somebody was going to shoot at you, wouldn't you shoot at them first? It's like, maybe I would try to figure out why they want to shoot me.
Well, I think the police have gotten in a lot of trouble for doing that.
Yeah.
or that you're in
Right.
trouble. You're not
Yeah.
that's not, I'm sorry, no, there's too much of a chance of being wrong. And
Exactly.
I have to say, we have a justice system, which I think most people will agree, where truth has no standing.
Yeah, Diane, I wanted to get your reaction to this video here. Also share tab audio. Yes, okay. Want to get your reaction here. This is our favorite New York representative, AOC, with a New York City councilman in I believe he represents Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, Chiose. And he says, I caught up with AOC at the DNC to talk about the elephant in the room, Gaza. If you can't hear this, let me know.
Neither party's official platform, in my opinion, is good on Palestine. I don't think either party right now is doing justice to Palestinians. That doesn't mean that they're the same. I think that a Donald Trump presidency would be absolutely catastrophic. I mean, he's coming out here saying, finish the job of a genocide.
There's a lot of people with our politics that are having a hard time getting there in terms of supporting Kamala Harris. How do you think we help them get there in November to beat Trump?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, first of all, it's important to emphasize how valid it is. We're looking at over 40,000 Palestinians that have died under Israeli bombardment. And the current U.S. administration has been continued to provide weapons to Israel that have been dropping on innocent Gazans. To me, when I process this, I weigh through all of the people living under extreme levels of oppression, especially outside of places even like New York. I think about the women that are bleeding out in ER rooms because they live in red states. I think about trans kids that are living in places where their entire families are trying to figure out if they need to pack up their entire lives and move somewhere else. We have to hold all of those things at once. And so to me, the conclusion that I've come to is having more people suffer to put on top of the already horrific suffering that's going on in Gaza is not something that I think I'm comfortable with.
So, you know,
Wow. Well, here you see the problem, which is she never understood, or I would say never understood. I'll cut her some slack. Never understood that we were on the brink of thermonuclear war because she supports arming Ukraine. And she hasn't bothered to inform herself that 600,000 Ukrainians are dead. They're under a fascist, totalitarian, pervert drug addict who is being used by NATO to grind up that population. And I do want to get to the fact that what the Ukrainians were trying to do with their invasion of Kursk is to attack a nuclear power plant, which is built on the model of Chernobyl, which had remember what happened with Chernobyl. That was a terrible catastrophe. I'm a strong advocate for nuclear power, but there are reasons. It's very powerful, and there are reasons why you have certain regulations and standards. And apparently the two of the cooling towers or whatever in Kursk, they don't have a dome protecting the spent fuel rods. So if you strike them, you are going to get a total radioactive disaster that threatens all of Europe. And the Russians have managed to protect them. But that's what was, and NATO is behind this. NATO is directing this invasion. Americans are arming it. So she claims that she's concerned about the plight of the Palestinian children, but somehow the fact that every single human being on this planet could be annihilated that's not a factor. And then this crazy narrative about the children. I mean, who's going to protect the children
the
from the crazy perverts who are trying to cut off various of the parts of their anatomy and who are saying, oh, you think you're depressed. You're just born in the wrong body. Let me get a surgeon over here right away. He'll cut off the offending organ. That's not why children are depressed. They're depressed because they had 2.5 years of lockdowns, no social interaction with other children, and the economy is crashing and their parents are stressed out. And if you're a kid, you can tell when your parents are stressed out. And that's what children are living through. Should we solve that, AOC?
Yeah, of course. I think the fact that I don't think she believes what she says either. How could she? She understands it's word salad what she's saying, and I think that's what happens when you just sell out. I think the fact that you and I can just speak transparently about what we actually believe, you know, and not think twice about it and believe in the truth. I mean, could you imagine if we were endorsing RFK and Trump and everything that they're saying, and we're like, well, I mean, it's, we don't believe that because we have a principle. We have a principle that we believe that every human being is created equal and nobody should be getting bombed to death, whether it's in Gaza or whether it's this war in Ukraine. That's going to end all of us. And I don't believe there's a single elected official that actually has the urgency or believes that the world is about to be blown up. I got criticized the other day, Diane, because somebody said I'm going to lose my election because I only focus on domestic policy, and that
You
people
mean
tune
foreign?
out what's that?
You're going to lose because you only focus on foreign or
On
domestic.
excuse me, on foreign, that I only focus on foreign policy and that I don't talk about domestic policy enough. Well, it's like, hey, you either believe the world is about to be blown up or you don't. If you don't believe that we are actually on the verge of thermonuclear war, then sure, go ahead. Go argue about who should the mayor be and how much our tariff rate should be and, how many more garbage pickups we should have during the day. But I would like to not live in an irradiated neighborhood where we are living in bunkers, because then that'll be really local politics. And I think people should take the fact that there was this interview done with this guy. What was the guy's name? Patrick Lancaster, right? And the Russian general. There was an interview done with this Russian general who said, like, hey, the official position of the United States right now is that they want a thermonuclear confrontation with Russia. And if you are not on board with this, you need to wake up. You need to get out into the streets right now and demand that this be stopped and take some damn responsibility for your government, which I think, Diane should bring us to our last topic, which is the RFK endorsement of Trump.
Right. And I will say, I listened to Kennedy's whole speech, the 50 minutes that he gave that afternoon. I think that is, frankly, it's will go down as one of the great speeches in American history. And this is me totally disagreeing with him and his sucking up to the Zionist lobby or whatever, for whatever reason, why he will not oppose the genocide in Gaza. But he outlined very, very clearly why he had to leave the Democratic Party, how it is fascist. Will AOC consider this? She worries about people bleeding out in emergency rooms or whatever. She's not concerned that the Democratic Party just lined up behind a woman who didn't get a single primary vote, that there is no democracy, that there will be no debate, that her constituents don't have a right to express their opinions. And then he also went through the censorship, and it was just a short paragraph, but he actually mentioned that he just won an injunction against the Biden administration for setting up a portal where the CIA, FBI, CISA, that's the cybersecurity group, can monitor all of the social media of everyone who disagrees with the official narrative, including himself. And then he developed very clearly the origins of the Ukraine crisis. My criticism there is I think he isn't forceful enough on it. I think he and Trump, both of whom have committed to end that war and who recognize the role of NATO expansionism and provocation of Russia and causing it, I think they need to be a little more explicit about how close we are to the end of everything. And I don't know, perhaps they don't realize how much we have pushed and pushed and pushed. We're about to push Russia over the edge. I don't know how much more Putin, we're invading their country and attacking their nuclear power plants, and their radar military facilities. So I thought it was actually remarkable. And the reason why I say it's a remarkable speech is he had to be aware that many of his supporters are going to be totally enraged, are going to say that he sold them out. It sounds like his family, he already was going against his family. Now he's going against them even more so. He said his wife but he nonetheless said, I promised not to be a spoiler. And having observed what the Democratic Party is doing, I cannot throw the election to Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
That's bold. And that's true, because if Kamala Harris gets in, I'm sorry, it will be worse than Trump, even though we'll have plenty of problems with Trump. But this woman will put us in a thermonuclear war, and we may get to that point before the election. So my position is we have to be alive first, and then we have to fight to rectify all of the other matters. And frankly, it's been a very long time since I've seen any political leader. Biden was forced to under threat from Obama, either the 25th Amendment or maybe that they were going to prosecute him for all of his crimes with his son. I don't know. Biden stepped down unwillingly. Kennedy said, basically, I have two things I'm concerned about: nuclear war, or war between Russia and Ukraine, which has to end, the health of children with all of this horrible stuff that's going in our food and the comorbidities that killed people during COVID. And he said, if I can address these things by working, if there's no credible possibility of me getting elected because of the censorship and the rigging of the whole process, but I would have a pathway to address these matters within a Trump administration, I will do that. That is very interesting, very gutsy. And I think people should just listen to it because his arguments are very, very clear. And I think if you're missing it, you don't understand, A, how totally destructive, fascist, totalitarian the Democratic Party is. They're all, oh, Trump is going to steal democracy. Well, who has been shutting down everybody, raiding everybody? That's the Democrats, right? That's who's censoring everybody. They have a candidate that no one even voted for. So the Democrats are the ones getting rid of democracy. And they also want to give us a nuclear war. So that's a package that I don't think anyone in their right mind could possibly vote for. If you want to vote for Jill Stein because she's against genocide and against war, fine. I have no problem with that. Kennedy was concerned to ensure we don't get Kamala Harris elected. And I think it was bold of him to do that. And I think he also will be a kind of a, what's the word, a conscience. Trump said that he is now going to release all the files on the Kennedy assassination with Kennedy standing by his side. That's a big deal. If that happens, there's a lot of mess in this country that we would begin to be able to clean up.
Absolutely. I don't really have much more to add other than, I was thinking about the idea of what it actually means to be a president, or to even say you want to take up the mantle of leading the country, right? Because you're basically saying you think you should be deciding the direction of the country in the time that you would be there. And I don't think RFK ever really got to that level of actually coming up to being a president. He got close when he made that speech on referencing on the anniversary of the American University speech. But I thought it was when he gave this concession speech, he was at his most presidential. And I thought for a second that guy was the president for a second, not because he was elected to be it, but because he spoke from a position of authority and leadership. And he said, this is what I think is the way we need to go. And that was very moving to me because I said, hey, okay, well, there is some reason in the country. There is some leadership in the country and some authority in the country. Because you compare RFK and Donald Trump, I mean, Donald Trump is trying his best. He put out some tweet today. I don't know if you saw this, Diane. It was actually, I thought it was kind of funny, but where was it here? Hold on, I have to pull this up because here, this Trump put this out today. I got to show this to you. He said, "Who is negotiating for us in the Middle East? Bombs are dropping all over the place. Sleepy Joe is sleeping on a beach in California, viciously exiled by the Democrats. And Comrade Kamala is doing a campaign bus tour with Tampon Tim." Really bad GP pick. Let's not have World War III because that's where we're heading. Whereas Kennedy is much more eloquent and much more,
Right.
focused in his speech. But I completely agree with what you're saying, Diana. And that's really all I have to add to what you said about the speech. So, I think that's where we stand. And
Well,
it only also.
I
Yep,
want to add one
go
thing
on.
because you put out a tweet somewhat. Look, this is why people need you and me in the Congress, in the House
Yeah.
and the Senate, because we are not part of that. We're certainly, neither of us is a billionaire or even a millionaire or even a multi-thousandaire, right? Why are we doing this? We're doing it for the good of the nation, to restore the Constitution, to make our nation a force for good in the world, to bring back the revolutionary anti-colonial identity of our republic. And you need us. Hello, everybody out there. You need us in the Congress because we are going to hold these people accountable. Part of the problem we have, I mean, look at AOC. What a sellout. Right? She said, oh, and that whole lie that Jimmy Dore goes after, that they were all going to fight for universal health
Yeah.
care and single, oh, we're going to fight. And then when it comes to the fight, oops, not there. Right? Oh, we're going to fight for Gaza, but we have to support the Democrats because, we want to save children's whatever. I mean, forget it. It's a total fraud. People smell that. It stinks to high heaven. And if people don't like that, then they have to elect you and me.
I concur. So if people want to support our campaigns to see that to be a reality, please donate to us. VoteVega.nyc, SlayerForSenate.com. And I think, Diane, I think we can just end it there.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Okay. As usual, no end card.